Thank you. Good morning. A year ago, I stood before you in San Francisco, and now, after so many extraordinary visits with you on your home fronts, we meet again on this other coast. I live in Connecticut. Though I grew up in New York, where my parents instilled in their 6 children a commitment to public service and a belief in the dignity of every human being. I lived here in Boston for a number of years, and 4 siblings and my mother now live here in Massachusetts. And my son teaches 20 minutes from here. I have a brother in New Hampshire and a daughter and son-in-law in Vermont. So welcome to my home. The land between our coasts and in Hawaii and Alaska is filled with problem solvers. They are students and educators and board members. Through my travels this year, I have learned a lot about what connects us. I have heard much about our differences and similarities, our collective hopes and dreams and frustrations, and many images still burn bright in my memory. The faces of the children in the New Orleans recovery schools, concentrating fiercely with teachers working hard to overcome the lunch bags full of challenges these children carry with them: poverty, hunger, trauma. I've seen the children of Hillsborough, Florida, and their teachers eagerly encouraging the children, worried that budget cuts might eliminate their positions. The first graders in a school in Utah speaking and writing in French, 4 months into their studies with their young teacher from France. I've seen board members engaging students and listening to their thinking. During my travels, I observed brain activity in a young child with a complicated puzzle to solve. You could see the fascination and engagement on that child's face as he used trial and error to manipulate that puzzle. His brain was stimulated and he was learning. But as soon as that little boy was told the answer, he lost interest and the brain activity stopped. You know what that looks like in the face of a child. The whole body is in motion when problem solving, but the eyes glaze over as soon as we try to pour information into their heads. They feel powerless and disrespected. This is what we are now doing to our children and to our teachers. We know from that brain research that kids, like all of us, are wired for what we need. They are curious and natural problem solvers, the ideal skills for a very uncertain future. Yet federal policymakers and many reformers seem oblivious to brain research and motivation research. They reject the wisdom of long-term educators as they demand of our schools mind-numbing drill and practice and educational decisions made far from Johnny in the 3rd grade. Now, standards have their place. Golf balls are built to spec. They need to be consistent sizes and shapes. They need to perform to specific standards for consistency. Children, on the other hand, come in different shapes and sizes. They're from different races and cultures with different inclinations and talents and gifts. We cannot build our children to spec and expect consistent results. Children are not golf balls. I am convinced that American public education remains what Ernie Boyer called the greatest success story in the history of the world. We have our challenges. Our media love to focus on those. But we also work miracles every single day. School boards play a critical role in those successes. We know our communities, our challenges, our hopes, and our inspirations. Because learning is value-laden, contextual, effective school boards know that decision-making has to be as close as possible to that child-teacher relationship. But federal and state policies are driving away many of our best and brightest. I talked recently with Earl Kim, the Montgomery Township, New Jersey superintendent of schools. He was a struggling Hawaiian teenager, but a teacher saw potential and encouraged him to pursue college. After attending Cornell on an ROTC scholarship, he served in the Marines, and then he went to teach in Trenton and received a master's degree from Princeton. He eventually became a visionary superintendent. To do what's right for children, Earl, like so many others, has spent the past few years fighting for equitable school funding and against so-called reform policies. Earl is really worried because federal and state policymakers don't understand motivation, and because of that, we are losing our best educators, those who want to imbue in children wisdom and a broader understanding of the world. He said, "The policies are to control and reduce discretion. Teachers have responded with the same learned helplessness children exhibit. We need to give autonomy and discretion to teachers." Earl himself is leaving public education, returning to Hawaii to work in private schools, where he expects to cultivate wisdom and self-directed learning. How do we motivate great educators to stay in public education? I'm reminded of what Vince Lombardi said to the Green Bay Packers when he first met them. He said, "I'm not remotely interested in just being good." And he proved it with outstanding teams. Rather than focusing on compliance and accountability, let's focus on our great vision. Let's unleash the potential in our staffs, inspiring them to do great things. But how can we, while the feds think their role is to regulate, direct, and enforce, and our local response is to interpret, comply, and resent? We have to find a better balance. To that end, I have written a letter to President Obama, including advice from many of you. You can read the whole letter on the Conference Daily website. I made 10 specific points. The first is we share a sense of urgency to give each and every child high-quality experiences to develop their full potential. Second, though we need some testing to gauge learning, we are at the point of damaging teaching and hurting children. We will never be first in the world on standardized tests, nor is that something to which we should aspire. We are not a compliant people, and that is our strength. Third, our vision should be to inspire excellence, recognizing that our most important resource is our children's minds. Fourth, since we know from motivation research that carrot and stick motivators are not effective for complex tasks, let's be sure the rewards of learning and the challenges of the work itself are the primary motivators of students and staff. Fifth, let's cultivate a spirit of innovation and inspiration. We will only succeed in preparing our children for the future if we empower all in our schools to think through complex problems and generate solutions. Rather than laboring over bureaucratic compliance problems, let's engage students, teachers, and even board members in solving problems of teaching and learning. Sixth, schools will never become great through threat or intimidation. Let's make them safe places to take risks, where staff and students feel valued for their ideas and talents, and empowered to fail so that they can grow. Seventh, we should invest in teacher training and professional development that's embedded in the work through coaching and ongoing support. Eighth, let's use our vast technological know-how to share ways to inspire learners. Beyond monitoring and performance, Federal policy should be to identify, support, and share excellent, proven ideas. Ninth, to make the greatest progress in closing achievement gaps, children born with the least must have rich learning environments. And finally, I asked the President to convene a national dialogue made up not of politicians, but including the breadth of educational thought to reconsider our policy direction. Current policy jeopardizes keys to our national success, our ingenuity, our openness to innovation, and our creativity, as we just heard from Michelle, is so important. Let's marshal the nation's brain power and tap into the research, proven practice, and demonstrated evidence of excellence. That's my challenge to the President, but it is also to Congress, to NSBA, and to you. NSBA is here to unite our voices. Let's demand policies that move us toward excellence and strengthen our humanity. If these are our expectations of Washington, what can we do ourselves? Board members working as teams with our superintendents can move mountains. If we're not working as teams, we flounder. When we wallow in our disagreements, circle the wagons and shoot inward, children suffer. Our former superintendent in East Lyme, Jack Reynolds, used to say, "It's amazing what you can accomplish if you don't care who gets the credit." And we proved it. So let's get beyond what divides us and come together around a vision that unites us. Let's look for models of the ideal that will bring out the passions of our students and staff, the enthusiasm of students, and the confidence of our communities. Studies of highly effective organizations, including the US Army, invariably talk about a key to their success as love. Love for the mission, love for the work, love for the people. Love for our work lets us thrive, and love for our colleagues and coworkers lets them thrive. Accountability and high expectations with love are what children need to learn. As I complete my year as president of NSBA, I know that the children of America are in good hands. Every minute spent with you at NSBA meetings, at your state and regional gatherings, has made that clear. It has been an enormous honor to serve you as we have advocated on behalf of America's public school children and school board governance. About a mile from this place, John F. Kennedy addressed the all-male Massachusetts legislature in 1961. He said, "For those to whom much is given, much is required. When at some future date the High Court of History sits in judgment on each of us, our success or failure will be measured by the answers to 4 questions. First, were we truly men of courage? Secondly, were we truly men of judgment? Third, were we truly men of integrity? And finally, were we truly men of dedication?" We have much to be proud of in America's public schools, thanks to your courage, judgment, dedication, integrity, and love. So whether your state is lapped by the Atlantic or the Pacific, or is far from either of those shores, together our challenge is to change the national trajectory. As President Obama wants for his daughters, we want each child in America to grow up in a world with no limits on their dreams and no achievements beyond their reach, and grow into compassionate, committed men and women who will help build that world. As I leave the NSBA board, I want to thank you for your leadership and the opportunity to serve with you. I love you. Thank you.